Okay, so hi everyone. This is my contribution to the INTP video trend that we're doing in the group at the moment, INTP group. So I apologize in advance for any weird formations that might occur during this. In terms of like visual, in the visual aspect, probably also in the auditive, but what the hell, it's just like, but I mean, in the visual aspect, it's probably, I don't know how to focus a camera or anything, so and that's because I'm blind, so I actually have no knowledge of what I'm doing at all, but that's kind of cool. That's a cool thing about this in a way. So yeah. So the 9 questions. Question number 1: how do you personally find you identify as an INTP, and are there any aspects of the stereotypical INTP that don't resonate for you? Well, I definitely identify as an INTP. I identify a lot with the with everything that INTPs are described as knowledge seeking. I'm definitely an information junkie in a lot of aspects. I don't, and also that the process is very is sort of crucial, as opposed to results, and actually working on a finished product, which is sometimes a little problematic in terms of like where my focus lies. It's also something that I can't always control, that focus. It's like there are just a lot of stuff that can catch my interest, and so I have these kind of, I can probably divide my life into sort of intellectual phases, or obsessions. Although there are some things that reoccur, and I ultimately try to refine, like sort of doing a grand synthesis, and I am pretty absent-minded, very scatterbrained in the presence of people sometimes, unless I'm specifically talking about the current obsession or the current something that I know a lot about. A little awkward, I guess, for that particular reason. And the fact that I relate best to that internal like TI process, in the sense that my thoughts are pretty structured, I find, but the way that it comes out and the way that what I'm doing is I'm always trying to get more information, instead of like making an internal judgment and talking about that. Yeah, and I can definitely be argumentative and I guess also insensitive. But that's probably the aspect of INTP attitude that I don't identify with, is, or probably not as much, or I think it's a misconception, and that is that INTPs are sort of androids, and there's this running joke about INTPs being androids or robots, which, to be fair, is not something that I can argue against, because I probably wouldn't know if I was an android. But, and I actually wonder sometimes what it's like to be an android. That would be pretty cool if you didn't sort of have a physical presence that you were to attend to and stuff. But in the what's implied is that INTPs don't have emotion, which isn't true. Of course, like for any human, it's not true. I think that we just process them differently. I'm able to, like, I have pretty good cognitive empathy in the sense that I understand people, and I definitely detect like patterns as I do with everything else in people and in different situations that occur, or that people describe to me. So I'm actually able to give pretty good advice, and yeah. So if people know that what they're gonna get isn't sort of sympathy or like expressing empathy with them necessarily, it isn't the first thing that I'm thinking about when I sort of try to talk to people. Sorry, I'm so zoning out of this. Yeah, so that was that question. Question number 2. Take us to your childhood. What was it like? What were you like? I was, first of all, like, I was very talkative whenever I, like, whenever something caught my attention that I had a previous knowledge about, or as I said, I could sort of divide my life into obsessions, and I definitely had a lot of, like, my main interest at the time was, like in my preteens, was probably geography and countries, specifically in the South Pacific. So I was sort of reading everything that related to that, and talk to anyone who wanted to listen. I was, but otherwise I was really quite easygoing and chill. I wasn't necessarily people avoidant, but I think I was probably a little weird, in the sense that there were a lot of things that I didn't understand about people at that time. So I definitely related less to the emotions of other people and the whole social procedural thing, which got me into trouble at times. I didn't really have a lot of friends in primary school. I was, yeah, but I could be argumentative. I think my mom would remember me as argumentative, or she remembers me as argumentative, I think. Yeah, I didn't necessarily. I was always like pushing the boundary, or I was asking questions. Like she called me the negotiator at one point. So that was what I was like as a child, pretty much. By the way, my parents were both ESTJs, and they got divorced when I was 5. So I find that interesting that like two INTJs who definitely shared two different kind of value system. Like they definitely didn't share any value system at all. So that's how that goes. Um, yeah. So question number 3. What do you feel happens when you die? Well, I disintegrate and I like decompose into the basic elements that the universe is made of, which means that I continue to be in the universe, but just because I'm just a combination of atoms. And that actually is a pretty beautiful idea. I think that's the closest I get to spirituality, is that the knowledge that I'm made of the same material as everything else in the universe. Yeah. So that's something I don't really need to have any beliefs about what happens to me specifically when I die, because like the universe is self-contained. That's really, yeah. Yeah. So question number 4: how do you balance alone time with being there for others? I have a specific group of people that I would be there for, or so I like to think. I definitely spend a lot of time alone, and I'm not very good at getting out of my head, so I sort of need that initiative from others. And I don't always realize how long I've been alone. Like, it's just like I've been alone for a week, and then it occurs to me that I ought to go out and do some socializing. And, well, as opposed to being there, with respect to being there for others, I suppose that I have this specific group of people that I'm there for, and that I would strive to be there for. I don't know. Like, I should probably be better at this. Actually, it's something that comes up frequently at the moment. So, question number 5: what is your ideal career like? Right now, I'm studying linguistics, and so that can lead to all kinds of interesting things. I am getting into information retrieval and language technology in next semester, so that's something that I'm looking very much forward to. So I'm interested in cognitive science and natural language processing, and sort of finding a way to combine these two. Apart from that, I have a lot of other stuff that I'm doing, and I'm not sure where I'm gonna end. So far, I'm just sort of enjoying the process of just always learning something new and being a student. Yeah. So, what's your ideal relationship like? Well, I'm not really seeking at the moment, but I would definitely want a relationship where the person was intellectually challenging, or at least like willing to engage in these kind of discussions. Didn't exist on following this sort of procedure or convention in relationship that inevitably leads to you getting married and having children, and like, I mean, just taking it for what it is and leaving it like uncomplicated and and just sort of observe it and enjoy the relationship and the process of getting to know each other and share things with each other, and and just this whole aspect of it. But this, like, the intellectual part is probably a must. And maturity. Someone who might be a little more socially aware than I am, because that's definitely something that I'm working on. So question number 8: if you could be any other personality type, which one would you choose to be and why? Well, I couldn't really imagine being anything but an INTP. That should be ENTP. But yeah, I'm introverted in the sense that I relate best to the internal process, and it's also what the one that I retrieve to if I need to recharge. So, well, what other type would I like to be? I can appreciate all the strengths of the other types, and I have thought of what it would be like to like be able to simulate to like create a simulation where you could sort of pretend to be a different type, or experience what it's like to be a different type, just for the fun of that. I think that, and I've always wondered what it's like to be an FE dominant, but that does not mean that I want to be an FE dominant necessarily. So I'm pretty content with being INTP. And yeah. So what are you currently working on by way of self-development? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is probably time management. Classic. But on a larger scale, I'm just viewing it as a process, really, that does not have an end goal, which would kind of be sort of almost a paradox, right? Like, but the whole self-developmental thing is something that goes on in the back of my mind. So it's more of a sort of self-surveillance or self-observation. Surveillance have some weird connotations nowadays, but self-observation, just reflecting on how I live my life, and having that process that goes on with that. That's something that constantly goes on, but I don't really have something specific other than maybe procrastinating a little less these days. So that's the 9 questions. So I hope that was interesting.